Ukraine's overnight drone blitz inflicts over $120 million in Russian strategic losses. In a single night, Ukraine expanded the battlefield far beyond the front lines, striking deep into the Russian mainland and occupied territories with a level of coordination rarely seen in this war. Drones targeted ports, refineries, power plants, and military hubs that Moscow once considered secure, plunging cities into darkness and igniting critical infrastructure across multiple regions. At the same time, political pressure, forced mobilization, and economic breakdown inside Russia exposed widening fractures behind the scenes. This was not just another strike, it was a strategic shot felt from the Black Sea to Moscow's inner circles. Now, the story begins with the first explosion. Today at 12:40 a.m., the first detonations echoed across Russian-held territory as Ukrainian unmanned systems initiated another coordinated, night-long strike campaign. What followed was a sweeping sequence of explosions across ports, substations, chemical facilities, and energy nodes from the Black Sea coast to occupied Donetsk, an operation that analysts later assessed caused more than $120 million in combined Russian military and infrastructure losses within hours. The pattern was deliberate, the timing was precise, and by dawn, the effects were visible from Novorossiysk to Crimea. From the outset, Ukraine's drone formations moved in multiple corridors. The first impacts were registered along the Russian Black Sea coast, where the port city of Novorossiysk came under sustained assault. Residents reported sirens sounding in 5-second intervals at 12:45 a.m., followed by at least 2 waves of explosive strikes. Naval infrastructure appeared to be the intended target. Analysts assessed that Ukraine was attempting to degrade Russia's safe harbor capabilities for Black Sea Fleet logistics, because Novorossiysk remains one of the Federation's key fallback ports after repeated Ukrainian attacks on Sevastopol. Minutes later, another strike wave reached the resort town of Anapa. Witnesses documented the same pattern: sirens first, then back-to-back detonations spreading across the coastline. Local Russian authorities attempted to frame the attack as a minor drone activity, but independent footage revealed significant secondary fires, indicating a likely hit on either fuel storage or an adjacent support facility. This synchronized pressure on both cities aligned with Kyiv's ongoing strategy to force Russia into spreading its air defense systems thinner across the Black Sea region, making subsequent waves harder to intercept. By 1:20 a.m., Ukraine expanded its reach toward Russia's interior. Drones were detected over Bryansk and Ryazan, probing air defense gaps and pushing the strike envelope deeper into Russian airspace. These flights had a secondary purpose. Even when individual drones were intercepted, each incursion forced Russian defense units to activate radars and reposition batteries, burning through ammunition and stressing command chains across multiple oblasts. But the most concentrated damage occurred in occupied Donetsk. Ukraine's unmanned strike units executed a series of precision hits on energy infrastructure that Russian forces rely on to maintain logistics centers, communications hubs, and barracks. Substations in Shakhtarsk, Zhurez, Torez, and Dukhchevsk absorbed direct hits. Fires broke out in several districts, and eyewitness videos captured entire transformer nodes erupting into bright blue flashes, evidence of high-voltage systems collapsing under explosive impact. Footage from Starobyshev showed one of the most visually striking moments of the night: a sudden, blue-white burst cutting through the dark horizon as a targeted facility failed instantly. Analysts assessed that this was likely a high-capacity distribution point, feeding both civilian grids and Russian military installations. Because Russia has relocated command elements and logistics hubs deeper into occupied Donetsk, degrading these nodes has immediate tactical value. Outages complicate mobility. Blackouts slow radar stations, launch sites, and depots' radar stations, drone launch sites, and depots storing artillery shells. Meanwhile, residents in Shakhtarsk and Dukhchevsk filmed continuous fires rising over the skyline. Torez experienced extended power loss, likely linked to the disruption of the 330 kV southern transmission line, a critical artery supporting Russian operations throughout the region. The cascading failures reinforced an emerging trend. Ukraine is increasingly prioritizing Russia's rear area energy network as a soft target that yields outsized operational effects. At 2:05 a.m., another strike was confirmed at the Starobesheva thermal power plant near Novi Svit. This facility has long been key to Russia's ability to support forward positions in eastern Donetsk. By disrupting it, Ukraine applied direct pressure on Russian sustainment capacity, especially during winter months when heating and power demands rise sharply. Yet the night's operations did not stop at Donetsk. Ukraine extended the strike zone into Crimea, where drones targeted an oil refinery. Local Russian sources reluctantly confirmed that multiple impacts occurred. Although official damage assessments were withheld, videos showing flames and emergency responses indicated a successful hit on processing infrastructure. Any disruption to Crimean fuel supplies restricts Russia's capacity to support operations across the Azov coast and southern Donetsk. Further east in Russia's Stavropol region, the industrial town of Budyonovsk witnessed a massive fire at the Stavrolen chemical plant, a facility Ukraine has struck before. The plant produces petrochemical products used both for civilian industry and for certain military-related applications. The scale of the fire suggested significant structural damage. And because the facility has already been subject to previous strikes, analysts believe this repeat hit was intended to compound earlier losses and render certain production lines non-functional. Then, at 3:15 a.m., residents in Krasnodar reported explosions at a thermal power station. Emergency services scrambled to contain fires that spread across multiple buildings. Although Russian officials characterized the attack as localized, satellite imagery later showed an extended burn zone. The fact that Ukraine was able to hit targets so widely distributed, Crimea, Krasnodar, Stavropol, Donetsk, Bryansk, demonstrated both expanded drone range and improved coordination between intelligence, surveillance, and targeting units. Collectively, the strikes signaled that Ukraine is no longer confining its operations to frontline engagements. The battlefield now stretches across every logistical artery Russia relies on. Each destroyed transformer, each refinery fire, each port explosion has a cumulative effect. It degrades the very systems Russia uses to occupy Ukrainian territory, and it signals that distance no longer guarantees safety. By 4:30 a.m., as power outages spread across occupied Donetsk, political reactions began surfacing abroad. Former US National Security Advisor Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg remarked on the ongoing negotiation frameworks being floated internationally. He suggested that both Ukraine and Russia could eventually be pushed toward a 28-point peace proposal, though he emphasized that conditions on the battlefield, especially Ukraine's ability to impose costs, would heavily influence any final settlement. Ukrainian officials, however, pointed to the broader stakes. A circulating video showed Ukrainian men in occupied Berdyansk being rounded up at dawn by Russian forces and transported to the front. Analysts described this as forced mobilization, an action that Kyiv highlights as proof that any territory ceded under a pressured peace deal would expose civilians to immediate coercion. These scenes underscored why Ukraine insists on resisting imposed concessions. When asked whether current US proposals represented a final offer for Ukraine, President Donald Trump stated that he wanted the war ended quickly, but noted that Russia could continue fighting if it rejected negotiations. The remarks were met with mixed responses in Europe. French President Emmanuel Macron responded by asserting that any peace framework must be strengthened. He emphasized that no border could be changed by force, and that Ukraine must never be left strategically vulnerable. His message reinforced a consistent European position, that Kyiv and Washington must coordinate closely, and that long-term security guarantees remain central to any agreement. Russia, meanwhile, reacted defensively. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova criticized the European Union's tightening of visa restrictions for Russian citizens. She claimed the measures were an attempt to prevent Western Europeans from having direct contact with Russians, part of a pattern of grievances Moscow regularly invokes when facing diplomatic pressure. The United Kingdom also issued a notable announcement. Defense Secretary John Healey stated that Britain was prepared to deploy troops to Ukraine as part of a coalition of the willing if a ceasefire were reached. He confirmed that London was ready to allocate more than $130 million to support such an operation, funding that would cover deployment, rotation, and stationing of personnel. This move signalled rising British commitment to assuring Ukraine's post-war security environment and maintaining stability along Europe's eastern flank. At the same time, internal problems within Russia's defense industry resurfaced. In the city of Yaroslavl, a shipyard operating under the Ministry of Defense contract went nearly 2 months without paying its workers. By November, multiple workshops had halted operations, and staff had been forced into involuntary leave. Workers said that management repeatedly promised that payments would resume, but none followed. Inquiries revealed that government tax authorities had frozen the plant's accounts due to unpaid taxes. The shipyard insisted that the delays were caused by late transfers from the Ministry of Defense, a common issue across Russia's overextended military-industrial sector. Rumors circulated among employees about potential payment dates, ranging from tomorrow to December 1st, but none were confirmed. The yard specializes in ships up to 3,500 tons, including landing craft, patrol vessels, and guard ships. Its most recent delivery, a Project 02221 raid boat for the Pacific Fleet, occurred in May 2024. The shipyard has been subject to international sanctions since 2019 due to its role in supplying the Russian military. After Russia's full-scale invasion, the United States, European Union, Canada, Switzerland, Ukraine, and Japan expanded restrictions further, squeezing the yard's access to funds, components, and contracts. The wage crisis reflected broader systemic strain within Russia's defense economy, already stressed by prolonged war spending and sustained battlefield losses. Ukraine's drone campaign concluded with one final wave over occupied Donetsk, leaving plumes of smoke rising above damaged power stations. Russian repair crews attempted to restore power, but many districts remained dark well into the daylight hours. Across all fronts, the night's operations demonstrated that Ukraine retains both initiative and reach. Each strike carried tactical purpose, whether to disrupt fuel supplies or force Russia to divert air defenses, and each contributed to what analysts estimate as more than $120 million in Russian losses within a single night's cycle. Today ends with a clear pattern. Ukraine advances through precision strikes, expanded drone capability, and coordinated pressure on Russian infrastructure. Russia absorbs the consequences: material losses, energy instability, economic strain, and growing political friction. Will these expanding Ukrainian strike capabilities reshape the next phase of the conflict, or will Russia attempt to escalate its defenses further?